The young SEAL laughed when he saw the cleaning lady pushing her cart down the hallway of the most secure building on the base. But 10 minutes later, he would be standing frozen beneath the wall of honor, staring at a name he had studied for months during training, realizing with a slow wave of dread that the quiet woman he had mocked might actually be the same decorated operator whose actions had once saved an entire team in combat. It was just after dawn at Naval Special Warfare Base Coronado, the kind of pale gray morning when the Pacific air hummed cool and damp over the concrete walkways, and the candidates moving through the compound carried the exhausted stiffness that came from hours of brutal training. Jake Mercer felt it in every muscle of his body as he and 2 other young SEAL trainees pushed through the heavy glass doors of the training complex, their boots leaving faint damp prints across the polished hallway floor. They had just finished a punishing surf torture drill, and the combination of sleep deprivation, salt water, and adrenaline left their nerves buzzing with the restless arrogance that often followed survival. Jake was 23, broad-shouldered and sharp-jawed, the kind of young man who had spent most of his life believing that confidence was the same thing as strength, and this morning he felt especially untouchable. He had made it through another week of the program, something many others had not, and that small victory hummed in his chest like electricity. The hallway they entered was long and quiet, lined with framed photographs of naval operations and plaques commemorating missions whose details were known only to a few, and halfway down the corridor stood a large display that every trainee on base eventually memorized: the Wall of Honor, a polished slab of dark stone engraved with the names of sailors who had performed acts of extraordinary courage during special operations around the world. Jake had walked past it dozens of times, but rarely gave it more than a passing glance, the names blending together like distant legends that belonged to a different generation of warriors. This morning, however, his attention wasn't on the wall. It was on the woman standing in the middle of the corridor with a mop. She looked young, younger than he expected for someone doing janitorial work on base, maybe late 20s, with dark hair pulled into a simple ponytail and a set of worn gray coveralls that marked her as part of the civilian maintenance staff. A yellow bucket sat beside her cleaning cart, and a scent of disinfectant drifted faintly through the hallway as she moved the mop slowly across the tile floor with calm, steady strokes. Her posture was relaxed but balanced, the kind of quiet stillness that suggested patience rather than fatigue. Jake barely noticed any of that. What he saw instead was an easy target for the restless humor bubbling in his chest. He slowed his pace, nudging his friend Tyler with an elbow as they approached. "Careful," Jake said loudly, his voice echoing lightly off the corridor walls. "Looks like we've got top-secret mop operations going on here." Tyler snorted, and the 3rd trainee, Cole, chuckled under his breath. The woman didn't look up. She kept mopping, sliding the damp strands across the tile with methodical calm, as if the comment had drifted past her like background noise. That lack of reaction only made Jake grin wider. He leaned one shoulder against the wall beside the briefing room door, folding his arms across his chest with exaggerated casualness. "You know this is a restricted hallway, right?" he continued, the teasing edge in his voice sharpening slightly. "Or are you just cleaning classified puddles?" Tyler laughed more openly this time. The sound bounced down the corridor and faded into the quiet spaces beyond. Still the woman said nothing. She dipped the mop back into the bucket, twisted the handle to wring out the water, and returned to the floor with the same calm rhythm. Jake watched her for a moment, puzzled by the complete lack of reaction. Most civilians on base tended to be nervous around SEAL trainees, especially when they were still dripping seawater and swaggering through hallways with the loud confidence of men who thought they belonged to the toughest program in the military. This woman, however, acted as if they were barely there. That indifference irritated him more than any insult might have. He pushed himself away from the wall and stepped closer to the cleaning cart, glancing down at the small collection of supplies arranged neatly on its metal shelf: spray bottles, folded towels, and a few odds and ends that clinked softly whenever the cart shifted. That was when he noticed the keychain. It hung from the side of the cart, swinging slightly as the woman moved the mop, a small bronze emblem shaped like a trident with an eagle and anchor at its center. Jake blinked once in surprise. The trident was the insignia of the Navy SEALs, a symbol every candidate dreamed of earning after completing the grueling pipeline of training. Seeing it hanging casually from a janitor's cart felt strange, almost ridiculous. Jake reached out and flicked the keychain lightly with one finger, making it spin on its ring. "Nice souvenir," he said with a smirk. "You picked that up at the gift shop?" The woman paused for the first time since they arrived. The mop stopped sliding across the tile. Slowly she lifted her head and looked at him. Her expression was calm, unreadable, with clear, steady eyes that held his gaze for a brief moment before drifting back to the floor she was cleaning. "Just doing my job," she said quietly. Her voice carried no irritation, no embarrassment, not even the polite nervousness he expected. It was simply a statement of fact, delivered with a level calm that made the teasing feel strangely out of place. Jake shrugged it off with another laugh, turning toward the briefing room door beside the wall of honor. He reached for the handle, still grinning at his friends, but something in his peripheral vision caught his attention before his fingers touched the metal. The polished stone of the wall of honor reflected the hallway lights in a faint sheen, and the engraved names across its surface formed neat rows of letters that trainees often studied during their quieter moments. Jake's eyes drifted across the list automatically, and one of the names seemed to jump out from the rest. He frowned slightly and leaned closer, squinting at the inscription. Petty Officer Elena Cruz. The name triggered a faint spark of recognition in the back of his mind, like a memory he couldn't quite reach. He had heard it somewhere before, maybe during a briefing, maybe during one of the long training lectures about legendary operations carried out by SEAL teams overseas. He glanced back over his shoulder toward the woman with the mop, studying her face more carefully now, and the uneasy feeling in his chest began to grow as his gaze shifted slowly between the quiet janitor in the hallway and the name etched permanently into the black stone of the wall of honor. Jake Mercer kept staring at the name on the wall of honor, the engraved letters suddenly feeling much heavier than they had a few minutes earlier. Petty Officer Elena Cruz. The name stirred a memory he hadn't expected to surface during a random morning in the hallway. Early in training, one of the instructors had mentioned that name during a briefing about real-world missions, an operation overseas that had almost ended in disaster until one operator refused to abandon two wounded teammates under enemy fire. Jake remembered the grainy images on the screen and the quiet respect in the instructor's voice when he explained how the rescue unfolded. That operator had been awarded the Silver Star, one of the highest decorations for valor. At the time, the story had felt distant, almost legendary, the kind of thing trainees listened to with admiration but never imagined encountering in real life. But now the name carved into the stone was sitting only a few feet away from the quiet woman mopping the floor behind him. Slowly Jake turned his head. The cleaning lady looked exactly the same as before, late 20s, dark hair tied back, sleeves rolled up as she calmly moved the mop across the tiles with slow, steady strokes. Her coveralls were slightly worn, and her cleaning cart sat beside her with a bucket, towels, and spray bottles neatly arranged. The small bronze trident keychain still hung from the side of the cart, gently tapping the metal frame every time the wheels shifted. Jake's confidence from earlier had started to fade, replaced by a strange tightening in his chest. Tyler noticed Jake staring again and leaned closer. "What are you looking at?" he asked quietly. Jake didn't answer right away. Instead, he pointed subtly toward the wall. Tyler stepped closer and read the name, then glanced over his shoulder toward the woman. "Wait," he murmured. Cole joined them, squinting at the engraved text beneath the name. The small description mentioned bravery during a classified rescue mission and confirmed the award Jake remembered from training. Cole looked back toward the janitor, then toward the wall again, clearly confused. "That's weird," he said under his breath. Jake tried to shake the thought away. Plenty of people shared the same name. There was no way the calm woman pushing a cleaning cart could be the same decorated operator whose story instructors used as an example of battlefield courage. But the doubt lingered. Now that he was paying attention, he noticed small things he had missed earlier. The quiet confidence in the way she stood, the balanced posture as she guided the mop, the steady focus in her eyes. None of it looked nervous or uncertain like most civilian workers around trainees. Tyler scratched his head, looking between Jake and the woman. "Why are you guys acting like that?" he asked. Before anyone could answer, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed down the hallway. All three trainees instinctively straightened when they saw Master Chief Daniel Hayes walking toward them. Even from a distance, His presence carried the calm authority of someone who had spent decades inside naval special warfare. His uniform was immaculate, and the gold seal trident pinned above his pocket caught the overhead light as he approached. Hayes slowed when he noticed the group standing beside the wall of honor and the cleaning cart nearby. His sharp eyes quickly took in the scene, the trainees lingering, the mop, and the woman quietly working in the corridor. Then his gaze settled on her face. For a moment, his expression softened with recognition. The Master Chief stopped a few feet away and straightened his posture. Jake felt his stomach tighten without understanding why. Then something happened that made the entire hallway fall silent. Master Chief Hayes raised his hand and gave the cleaning lady a crisp salute. "Morning, Cruz," he said calmly. The words hit Jake like a sudden jolt of electricity. The woman leaned lightly on the mop handle and returned the greeting with a small nod, completely unfazed. "Morning, Master Chief," she replied in the same quiet tone she had used earlier. Tyler's eyes widened. Cole looked back toward the wall again, as if hoping the name had somehow changed. Jake felt heat creeping up the back of his neck. The connection that had seemed impossible only seconds ago now stood directly in front of him. The quiet janitor he had mocked was the same Elena Cruz whose name had been engraved permanently into the base's wall of honor. And suddenly the memory of his jokes from just a few minutes earlier felt a lot less funny. For a moment Jake Mercer couldn't move. The hallway that had felt so ordinary a few minutes earlier now seemed painfully quiet as the realization settled over him. Master Chief Hayes lowered his salute and looked slowly from the woman to the three trainees standing awkwardly beside the wall of honor. His eyes rested on Jake a second longer than the others, sharp enough to make the young SEAL candidate feel as if every careless joke he had made was written across his face. "Everything all right here?" Hayes asked calmly. Jake opened his mouth, but nothing came out at first. The confidence he'd been carrying earlier had completely vanished, replaced by a knot of embarrassment in his chest. "Yes, Master Chief," he finally managed, though his voice sounded thinner than he expected. The woman, Elena Cruz, simply dipped the mop back into the bucket and wrung it out with a slow twist of the handle, as if none of the tension around her mattered. Then she looked up at Jake again, her expression calm rather than angry. "Rough morning?" she asked lightly. The simple question caught him off guard. Jake rubbed the back of his neck, suddenly aware of how childish he must have sounded earlier. "Ma'am, I didn't realize who you were," he said quietly. Cruz gave a small shrug. "That happens a lot," she replied. There was no bitterness in her voice, just quiet acceptance. Master Chief Hayes stepped a little closer, folding his arms as he watched the exchange. "Cruz here used to run operations some of you trainees still study," he said. After her last deployment, she chose to stay on base working civilian support. Jake glanced at the wall of honor again, then back at the mop in her hands. The contrast felt surreal. Cruz noticed his look and smiled faintly. "The job doesn't really matter," she said. "Being part of the team does." She pushed the cleaning cart forward again, guiding it down the hallway as if the conversation was already finished. Before she walked away completely, she glanced back at Jake once more. "Just remember something," she added gently. "Respect people before you know their story." Then she continued down the corridor, the wheels of the cart rolling softly across the tile, while the bronze trident keychain swung lightly against the metal frame. Jake watched her go, feeling the weight of the lesson settle in. For the first time since joining training, the words Wall of Honor didn't feel like distant history carved in stone. They felt like a reminder standing right in front of him. That real strength didn't always wear the uniform everyone expected.